Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking behind the curtain of history at black gold, the dark history of spices, and exactly how spices ruined empires. You know that tiny pinch of black pepper you sprinkled on your eggs this morning? Well, believe it or not, it was actually once worth more than a human life.
So you might be wondering, did pepper really start global wars? I know, it sounds totally crazy, but we're going to explore how simple human cravings for everyday kitchen ingredients built, corrupted, and ultimately destroyed entire empires, literally changing the map of the world forever. It sounds like pure fiction, but I assure you, it is entirely real.
Just think about a tiny, unassuming peppercorn on one hand and a massive barrel of crude oil on the other. It's a pretty wild comparison, right? But just as ancient people in Mesopotamia discovered the immense power of that thick, black liquid seeping from the ground, early humans realized that certain seeds and barks weren't just for taste. They had powerful medicinal uses. And as humanity developed this insatiable craving for these flavors, they didn't just stay in the kitchen. No, they quickly transformed into tools of extreme global power.
Which brings us to Section 1, the search for paradise, obsession and the silent ocean wars.
Now, to really understand the motivations of European kings and queens back then, think of Mavis from Hotel Transylvania. You know, her stubborn dream to see Hawaii and the outside world? Well, the European monarchs were actually a lot like Mavis in that regard. They were absolutely obsessed. They treated these flavors like a modern black budget, willing to risk literally everything, just throwing all caution to the wind to find their own paradise out in the mysterious Spice Islands.
But how did they get there? Look, it was anything but a peaceful exploration. It's kind of like how the CIA was founded in 1945 to wage a silent war for global influence. The great empires followed a strikingly similar playbook. First, Portugal launches its own silent wars across the oceans. Then, Phase 2, Spain enters the fray, totally desperate for a direct route to those exotic flavors. And finally, Britain joins the massive global imperial push. They were all basically conducting historical covert operations just to secure these incredibly lucrative maritime routes.
Moving on to Section 2, the Shadow War of Trade. Monopolies, bribes, and blood.
The absolutely crucial point here is that this wasn't just your standard merchant business of buying and selling. It rapidly deteriorated into a brutal shadow war. In fact, European powers operated in a way that perfectly mirrors John D. Rockefeller's oil strategy centuries later. You see, Rockefeller realized that real wealth wasn't just in finding oil. It was in controlling the refineries in the entire supply chain. Similarly, these European empires realized that true wealth required an absolute monopoly. Competing on a free market? No way. Instead, they controlled the global shipping routes, bribed local leaders, spread vicious propaganda, and used sheer military force to ensure absolutely no one else could sell pepper or cinnamon.
And that leads right into Section 3, the quagmire of control, the devastating fallout.
Because ensuring that monopoly triggered a really dark and devastating sequence of events. The reality is just incredibly sobering. This unrelenting pursuit of dominance led directly to horrific massacres of local populations. We saw the complete collapse of once prosperous local empires who were tragically caught up in the crossfire of all this European greed. And ultimately, this aggressive expansion created a massive quagmire for the occupying powers themselves. It was very much like Vietnam was for the US in the 20th century. They found themselves trapped in endless, draining conflicts they couldn't easily win, but also couldn't just walk away from.
This created a terrifying reality of massive black budgets. The true cost of maintaining this ruthless, iron-fisted control wasn't just paid in gold coins, It was paid in immeasurable amounts of blood and these staggering hidden financial expenditures that slowly drained the very empires that started the wars in the first place. To put it simply, the cost of flavor was astronomically high.
Let's look at Section 4, the modern spice legacy, the mirror's truth. Consider for a second the philosophical concept of the pencil's tail. It basically teaches us that a pencil has to undergo a painful sharpening in order to become a useful tool that can actually write and create. Well, this perfectly applies to our global history. The bitter, violent, and honestly agonizing history of the spice trade was, in essence, the painful sharpening of the world. It's exactly what laid the complex, interconnected foundation for our modern global economy. Whether we like it or not, we just wouldn't have the world we live in today without that incredibly painful process. So the crucial takeaway here is this. The next time you open your kitchen cabinet to make dinner, just take a moment to look at those little jars. Remember that those everyday seasonings carry the heavy, dramatic legacy of millions of people who traversed a really perilous globe searching for their zing. They were driven by this absolute insatiable desire for flavor and wealth.
And in doing so, they left a permanent, albeit deeply painful, mark on human history. I want to invite you to join our network of curious minds with this final thought. Go take a look in your pantry, tell us what your absolute favorite spice is, and ask yourself, did you ever imagine the bloody, world-altering history hiding inside that tiny, unassuming bottle? Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.